Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're studying pharmaceutical engineering, especially for your B-Pharm exams, you know that dealing with superfine powders is a huge part of the job. So today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental tools you'll ever use, the Cyclone Separator. Let's dive right into how this incredibly simple-looking device gets such a critical job done.
All right, so to really get why the cyclone separator is such a big deal, we first have to wrap our heads around the exact problem it was designed to solve. And that is the pharma dust problem. So this is the million-dollar question, right? Picture this. You're in a huge manufacturing facility. You've just spent hours, maybe days, creating a batch of some life-saving drug, and it's now a super fine powder. How on earth do you collect every last bit of that precious powder without it just poof, floating away into the air?
Yeah, this is the day-to-day reality. When you're milling or grinding down active ingredients, you don't just get a nice, neat pile of powder. No way. You get a cloud. And this dust cloud isn't just messy, it can be a serious safety issue. And just as important, every particle floating in that air is valuable product. It's money, literally floating away.
So how does this machine tackle that dust cloud? Well, it all comes down to using a basic, fundamental force of physics. Let's pull back the curtain on the secret ingredient here, centrifugal force.
Now, here is the textbook definition for you, but put simply, it's just that outward push you feel whenever something is spinning. It's really just inertia, an object wanting to go in a straight line, and we can use that simple effect in a really clever way. We have all felt this, right? You're on a merry-go-round as a kid. The faster it spins, the harder you have to hold on because you feel like you're being thrown to the outside. That exact outward push is the principle we're going to harness to snatch these drug powders right out of the air.
So here's the key takeaway. When you take a mix of air and powder and spin it really fast, something beautiful and simple happens. Those solid powder particles are thousands of times heavier than the air molecules around them, so they get flung outwards and smack into the wall, while the much lighter air, well, it just stays hanging out in the middle. It's a beautifully elegant way to separate things.
Okay, so we get the principle now. Let's take a look at the machine itself. We're going to do a quick breakdown of the anatomy of a cyclone, and you'll see it's made of just a few very simple key parts. You know, for how important it is, the design is surprisingly basic. You've got the main body, that's the cylinder on top of a cone shape. Then you have the ports. There's a tangential inlet, that's where the dusty air gets blasted in from the side. You've got an outlet right at the bottom for our collected solids. And then at the very top, there's an air outlet for the clean air to escape. That top part is often called a vortex finder. Cool name, right? Because it basically helps that inner spiral of clean air find its way out. All right, we've got the parts, we've got the principle. Let's put it all into motion and see exactly how this separation process works, step by step. This is where the magic happens. Okay, here we go. First, that dusty air is shot into the side inlet, and because it comes in tangentially, it immediately starts spinning like crazy, forming a big, powerful outer vortex. As it spins, that centrifugal force takes over, just like we talked about, and it slams the heavier solid particles against the outer wall. Now, once they hit the wall, they lose their speed and gravity takes over. They just slide down the cone-shaped base and get collected at the bottom. Meanwhile, the now clean, lighter air, it actually reverses direction, forming a second, smaller vortex right in the middle that spirals all the way up and out through the top. It's an amazing, continuous, two-way spiral.
So it sounds pretty perfect, doesn't it? Well, like any piece of engineering, it's got its strengths and its weaknesses. Let's get real and take a look at its actual performance, the pros and the cons. In the pharma world, you are going to see these things everywhere. Seriously, they're hooked up to mills and grinders to catch the product. They're used for processing things like dry herbal powders, and very often, you'll see them acting as a pre-cleaner. Think of it like a bouncer. It's the essential first step that gets rid of the big, bulky stuff before the air moves on to a more sensitive and way more expensive high-tech filter. The advantages are pretty obvious, right? The design is simple, and get this, there are no moving parts. That means maintenance is super low, and so are the running costs. Plus, it can handle enormous volumes of air. But there's always a but. On the downside, it needs a pretty high air pressure to work well, and its efficiency is totally dependent on keeping that air velocity just right. And here's the big one, it's just not that great at catching the really fine particles. This is the number I want you to remember. Less than 5 micrometers, or microns. For particles that are this tiny, the centrifugal force just isn't strong enough to throw them out of the airstream. They're so light, they just get swept up with the clean air and escape right out the top. This right here is the cyclone's single biggest weakness.
So if you're going to take one thing away from this, let it be this. Think of the Cyclone Separator as the tough, reliable workhorse of separation. It's fantastic for getting the vast majority of the powder out of the air, and it does it fast and cheap. But it is not a tool for final, absolute purification. It's your first and most important line of defense. And that, of course, brings us to the final, critical question. The Cyclone is great for everything above 5 microns, sure, but what about all that ultrafine dust that it can't catch? What technology comes next in the process to grab those last, tiniest particles and make the air truly pure? Well, that is the next piece of our engineering puzzle. Thanks so much for joining this explainer.